Good morning and welcome to day 4 of ITL's takeover of the state of football. Can't stop, won't stop. It is July 29th, 2021, episode 257. Bo, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Neil. Hopefully I have no internet connections and my phone doesn't overheat and we'll go completely through the show.
We can only hope, man. I mean, we really haven't had a lot of big glitches this week, and that was definitely one of them. But we roll with the punches here at the TSOF, and we'll make do. Gosh, we're 4 days in. I can't believe it. This is actually starting to get a little easier. Still have total respect for what Rick and Sam do, but it's becoming a little bit more of a flow. We're getting a little bit more used to this. Hopefully, the people out there watching are getting a little used to our ugly mugs as well. Midpoint of the week. All right, today's guest, Don Williams, will be taking the exam in, my gosh, 7 days until the agent exam. Just not that far away. We'll have Noel Lamontagne of Verdant's Capital Advisors. Noel's a wealth manager as well as an agent still, and played at UVA as well as in the NFL. And then Mike Sullivan. Mike was an agent, a super agent for a long time. He did the number 1 overall players, Michael Vick, I believe in 2001, and David Carr in 2002, back-to-back years. So they'll have a lot to offer. Mike also was the DFA, Director of Football Administration for the Broncos for, I believe, 8 years. So he's got a lot of great perspective to offer. But one thing about Noel Lamontagne is, I believe, a cousin is Ray Lamontagne, who's a musician, a singer. I think all three of us kind of are fans. My favorite is my favorite Ray Lamontagne song is For the Summer. Bo, what you got? How about you, man? You have any familiarity with
it's right off the top of my head, Trouble. My daughter does little songs. Yeah, she did little things when she plays guitar. Ray Lamontagne is definitely one of the gentlemen that she knows a few strings to. So there's like 2 or 3 songs, but I'm not a real big name song, but I know Trouble. I think You Are the Best Part of Me. Yeah, and I know there's one more. I could sing it. I won't, but I do know it. So.
Bo, you're talented too, man. I mean, why not sing or dance, whatever you want to do? I mean, listen, we got a command audience here, so take it away if you're feeling the muse, man. Just go for it.
No, if I was on a show, it'd be called Least Talented. So.
All right. Well, look. All right. So, a lot of great guests this week. 3 more great guests to come. Again, 7 days away from the exam. I can't believe it. It seems like we've been walking toward this day. Well, we have for 2 years. No exam last summer, so we've got a big class estimated around 500 people that will be taking the exam. A lot of those are taking it for the second time after failing in 2019, but they'll begin that second bite of the apple. As I think probably most people know out there, you pay $2,500, you get to take the exam once over the next 2 years. If you fail it, then you get a second time, and if you fail it the second time, you got to wait 5 years to take the exam again. So you want to make sure you do it right. We've got a lot of exam prep services out there. We also this week have Sunday and Monday we have sessions with an actual real live NFL agent, and he'll be working 3 problems and then taking questions. Any questions of any stripe will go for 90 minutes each on Zoom, and make sure that everybody gets everything ironed out Sunday and Monday. And it's $75 for each session, or $125 for both. And you can find all that information on my Twitter, or hit me up directly on my DM, and we'll get you set up for that as well. All right, you ready to go? You ready to dive in?
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate what you just said about that exam. When we're on the All-Star circuit or down at the Combine, where agents are in influx of popularity, Neil is always approached agent after agent, and they always talk about how much this prep helped them, advancing them, and then helping them literally pass this test. So I just want to really hammer home the importance. If you're on the fence, you're listening, it's a wise investment. If this is your goal to be certified next Thursday, when you walk out of that room or on your computer, however they're going to do it, I really suggest you partake in this.
Yeah, well, thanks, Bob. It's we do try to help. We're all about the win-win here at ITL, and that's one way you can help yourself win is take advantage of those exam prep services. All right, Sam, let's get it going.
You can't become an agent without passing the exam. We can help. We introduced our first practice test in 2012. Since then, we've added a study guide and a second exam, and we've helped hundreds pass a test that 55% fail. Our clients succeed at a rate 25% higher than others. For the cost of a plane ticket, you can buy our guide and take both our exams multiple times. Check us out.
As parents, coaches, and mentors, we are there for all of our athletes' bumps and bruises, triumphs and failures. We believe that playing sports is a great way to teach our children fundamental life lessons, but we also want to keep them safe and prevent serious injuries. One of the biggest misconceptions in sports safety today is that helmets prevent concussions. Helmets do not prevent concussions. A 2014 study by Dr. Robert Cantu from the CTE Center at Boston University's School of Medicine concluded that the most significant factor in reducing concussion risk is increasing neck strength. Cantu determined that for every 1 pound increase in neck strength, odds of concussion decreased by 5%. With that in mind, we created BrainVault, a revolutionary and patented mouthguard that has been shown in our independent testing to put the jaw in the optimal position to properly align the head and neck and increase neck strength by an average of 17 pounds. We may never be able to fully prevent concussions, but BrainVault plays a critical role in reducing overall concussion risk and is backed by science. To learn more about our easy, affordable, and effective technology, visit brainvault.com and join the movement.
Really enjoyed the training. I pretty much had everything over here.
Margaritas was the best decision I ever made. I came out and had a great combine.
Margaritas is exceptional. I've been coming here for 4 years, since I was a rookie, since I came out of college.
The Pete and everybody else phones. Without them, this wouldn't be possible right now.
Some of the best players in every position, they come here and work out.
The staff is phenomenal. The medical, everybody here is family-based, family-oriented.
Trained here for the combine, and I don't think there's no better place than this.
Got faster, got stronger.
All right, here we go.
Excellent stuff. Our first guest today here on day 4 of the State of Football is Don Williams. Don has spent several years making connections and football representation and recruiting, but it's not until this summer that he's partaking in the NFLPA exam. It comes after a year-long wait, and along with hundreds of other agent hopefuls who plan on taking the test that was canceled last summer. This also coincides with the kickoff to the National Football League in Canton. So you got agents taking the exam, and you got football in Canton between the Steelers and the Cowboys. But with that said, Don, welcome to the program. Good morning. I hope the day's treating you well so far.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Doing great, Don. Welcome, buddy. All right, so Don, tell us your story. I mean, there are a lot of people that are coming into this that are taking the exam that may be a lifelong goal for them. How did you get here? Who have you worked with in the football industry, and why did you decide you want to be an agent?
Well, I'm originally from New Orleans. Played football growing up. Not as big guy. I'm 5'5", so I knew playing football wasn't in my future. So I ended up going to LSU. Made a lot of relationships with athletes, majored in marketing, and to graduate from LSU, you need an internship. So one of my friends, Quan Alexander, introduced me to his agent, Zeke Sandu. So that was my first, enter into the game, and didn't last too long. Quan ended up leaving, going to Rosenhaus Sports. So, I wasn't really valued to Zeke. So, after that, it was a bit like cold calling. I worked with Shark Sports for a while. I worked with a few local agents in New Orleans. And then I latched on with Rocky Arsenal at Alliance Sports. And that's when I did a lot of learning. Him and Brian over there helped me out a lot. And that's when I first realized, like, I could legit be an agent. Because at first I just wanted to be on the marketing side of it. It was no test. And, it was fun still being able to talk to a lot of athletes. But after working with them for a bit, I felt like, I should try to be an agent.
Okay. Now, you're approaching this business as an independent, Don, as a contract advisor. Is that an intimidating thought process? And do you feel that a bigger firm would be better? And why or why not in terms of both those questions?
I don't know if I'll be independent. I have talked to a few agencies, including Alliance, but right now it's just waiting and seeing until after the exam results come back.
Yeah, obviously that exam's a big stumbling block and has a 55% failure rate. I mean, the majority of people do fail the exam, which is kind of crazy and probably a little intimidating. How do you feel ready for it, Don? And if so, how have you prepared for it? What have you done? What makes you feel like you're going to pass this sucker?
I feel good. I've been studying for like the past 6 months. I use your resource a lot, and I have my study group. That's definitely the reason I feel so confident. We get together, meet on Zoom weekly, twice a week now, go over the practice exams, go over the notes. So, I feel good.
Okay. How many people are in your study group? And how'd you find them, Don?
It's 4 of us, 5 of us. And an agent actually introduced me to Agent Brian out of Florida, introduced me to Dylan. And Dylan set up our study group.
Okay. Well, that's good. Strength in numbers, man. That's great.
Yeah. Now, you got roots in one of the richest recruiting states in the nation, Louisiana, Don. Do you plan on focusing in-state, or will you recruit across the Southeast, or will you even go across all, states looking for the next guy that you can sign?
I'll definitely be focused in the South and Louisiana. But with being focused in Louisiana, it kind of branches me out because a lot of our guys go to schools all across the country. They got guys at Louisville, LSU, TCU, so it kind of opens everything up. And I focus here just because we have so many connections. It's just like I might know this guy's brother, this guy's uncle, and he might not be at LSU, but he's still connected to Louisiana.
Nice.
Yeah, man. Hey, look, the Bayou State's got it's like an octopus. They got connections all over the country because they send players everywhere. It's kind of like Texas, where I am now. Same deal. California, Florida, players from all around there go everywhere. Yeah. All right. So you mentioned the fact, Don, you have a background in marketing. It's where you feel comfortable, which is probably a good thing in today's football industry. Several forces like NIL, name, image, and likeness, and as well as the transfer portal, have shaken up the agent recruiting and draft process. Do you see this as a stumbling block because it's so much more complicated now, or does it give you an opportunity as a new agent who's kind of coming in on the ground floor of such big forces like that?
I see it both ways. I see it as a stumbling block because it is a bit confusing since it's not uniformed. Every state kind of has different laws on it, and you can't operate in Louisiana the same way you operate in, say, Ohio. And I look at it as an opportunity because it's innovative. So it gives, younger agents, younger people an opportunity to have some kind of edge against, the more experienced firms. And especially when you're dealing with guys that may not have as much buzz going into the season. And you could get on the smaller guys first because everybody's jumping on the bigger guys for the NIL. So they're definitely going to miss some guys that's going to slip through the cracks. And that's going to be an opportunity for smaller agents to, prosper.
Do you expect the players, and this may be a question you haven't really tackled yet because you aren't certified yet, but do you think that players have reasonable expectations on NIL right now and maybe even their families as well? Or do you think they're thinking, oh my gosh, this is like a big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? I mean, is that something do you feel like that's something you're going to have to kind of explain and maybe set expectations there?
Definitely. I don't think they have reasonable expectations right now. I think everybody just think they're about to get rich. And, that's not what's about to happen. But somebody has to break it to them, honestly, because a lot of these guys are being bought. But, when you don't have the resources to buy, you kind of got to be honest and be like, the market isn't really setting up for you. And, a lot of these guys should understand. I saw Ed Ogeron tap into it a bit yesterday about how he felt like a lot of guys are going to get, brought back down to earth with it when they see some guys getting, big offers and then they're just, not getting, much at all.
Yeah,
I get it.
Great point.
So are you still in contact with Quan? Do you know him at all, man? As a Saints fan, he did a lot for our defense last year, as kind of slowing down the pass, really helping out in pass coverage, man. Is he still someone that you talk to, and is the Achilles doing okay for him now?
Yeah, he's back. He's healthy. He feel good. He visited the Saints last week.
Yeah.
So hopefully a reunion in order.
Yeah. Hopefully we can work something out there. Are you a Who Dad as well, Don?
Yes, sir.
And you got to be an LSU. You got to be part of the Go Tigers Nation as well, right?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, they kick you out of the state if you're not a member in good standing of both those groups, man.
Definitely.
All right, perfect, Don. Well, listen, thanks so much for being on, buddy. We appreciate you. Best of luck in a week. I know you're going to kill it, and of course, we're here to help. And thanks again for being part of the ITL family and using our resources, buddy.
Appreciate y'all for having me on.
Good luck next week, Don.
All right, thank you.
All right, man. Tough exam. I think Don's ready. Having that study group, it's got to be a big help, strength in numbers, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I hope again. Good luck to him, and big week for all these guys. Are we ready for our next guest, Neil?
I think we are, man. Let's tell us who it is.
All right, our next guest. There are few people who have done as much in football as Noel Lamontagne. Noel went from being a standout collegiate player at Virginia to an NFL offensive lineman with the Cleveland Browns in the early 2000s. And then he got his NFLPA certification in 2004. He's worked with several NFL's top players while advising them. He got them to negotiate some of the biggest blockbuster deals on their behalf. He currently maintains a small handful of active NFL clients as a contract advisor, but he has primarily transitioned to the wealth management arena as the director of sports and entertainment division for Fandet's Capital Advisors. Noel, it's an honor to welcome you to the program this morning. I hope you're having a good start to your day.
Yeah, you guys got me up bright and early, so I appreciate it. And it was I got to catch the tail end of that conversation with Don, and it's always a lot of fun to be on shows like this one where you guys talk about real issues, real concepts, and give people some good perspective on things as they really are.
We should mention that Noel's on the West Coast, so it's 6:20 a.m. for him. I mean, I just the mere being here is a testament to his interest in the industry and his friendship with me. And so, Noel, I really appreciate you coming on, buddy, being so early.
Hey, go back to bed. You should have never been contacted for this. Neil, I'm ashamed of you, sir.
Yeah, I know. No, with friends like Bo, I don't need enemies, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so Noel, you spent more than a decade with one of the more respected agencies in the business, Eastern Athletic Services, which is headed by Tony. It's they've been Tony Agnon. It's been around for decades, literally, and obviously Tony's one of the bigger names in the industry. However, you decided to move into the financial side, into wealth management. Tell me what prompted that move, and do you feel like it was the right move?
First of all, for me, it was definitely the right move. And when I got into the business, I came into it more from a player perspective. I wanted to make a difference. I had spent a few years, not as long as I maybe would have wanted or thought, but football is what it is. And I just heard a lot of things in the locker room in the brief time that I was in the NFL. I heard plenty of things in the locker room when I was in college. And it was pretty apparent to me in that short period that there was a lot of bad advice being given. Even describing it as advice was a disservice to what it was. And just guys making decisions that made absolutely no sense. And I can remember so many times sitting there thinking, who is supposed to be advocating for this guy? And so the opportunity to become a player rep, it really just fell in my lap. It wasn't anything that I ever aspired to do. And got the opportunity, thought about it for a little bit, talked to some people that I trusted, and said, yeah, you know what, let me give this a try. And 15 years later, now 20 years, almost 20 years later, I'm still not as involved in it as I was when I was out there really driving for recruiting prospects and everything in the early years and middle years. But what I saw happen in the business over time was what got me in there. The focus on the relationships, the focus on the client, making a difference, just started to become less and less important. In your prior conversation, you guys were talking about the NIL. The business has become very transactional. Athletes change over time. People change over time generationally. I think a lot of athletes, especially those coming out of high school, they think they're a lot more important than they are. They're given that, they're bolstered that way by the recruiting process. Now the college kids think they're a lot more important than they are. Nowadays it's an immediate, everything is immediate right now. You want news, you get on Twitter. You want to order a bottle of wine, you jump on Drizzle. Everything is right at our fingertips. And I think a lot of these young athletes, they've been put into this bubble where they can get everything they want right now, whether they earned it or not. And I talk a lot about entitlement and people expecting things that they maybe don't deserve. And some of these guys do. Listen, the LeBron James of the world, those guys were freaks when they were coming out of high school. They were obviously better than everybody else. I grew up where Kobe Bryant grew up, so I watched him play basketball live in high school. I was with the Browns while LeBron was at St. Ignatius, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And you could see those guys were different. But the vast majority of these kids, and by that I mean 99.99% of them, they're not any different than anybody else. And the reality is the vast majority of them are gonna end up not being what everybody is billing them up to be right now. They're going to be successful human beings, hopefully, but they're not all going to be John Elway. So for me, that just became more and more apparent. Finding the guys that I really wanted to pour my professional and personal life into became more and more difficult. And it was just time to evolve with the athletes and, focus on that relationship and transition into that longer term advisory role. And Verdance and the wealth management side gave me that opportunity, and it's been incredible. And the beauty of it is it's not just football, it's baseball, it's hockey, it's private individuals in the business world. And listen, I'm old now, so I'm seeking out the more mature clientele and the older athletes who really want to focus on what is important versus marketing a bobblehead for $50 and acting like that's the end all be all on Twitter.
No, that's a great response. And being around the agent community, or even the financial side with the advisors, that's funny that I hear that a lot. Just some guy, as you get older, you do want that older type, a coach or some sort. You don't want that young player. You kind of want to move on. Now, there was a point earlier in your career that you considered running strongly for the executive director of the NFLPA. Why were you in that thought process, and does that thought process still exist?
It was born out of just building frustration. Ooh. And seeing so many people around, speaking directly to the NFL situation, seeing so many people around the players that are advocates for everybody but the player. And I looked at it and I said, listen, who is supposed to be the number one advocate for the player outside of the agent? And that's supposed to be the players union. So, there was the hole that was there, for as much as it was presented anyway, there may or may not have been an election that went on, and, they were looking for people, hey, listen, throw your hat in the ring if you're interested. And I really did. I talked to a lot of people. I spent a lot of time thinking about it just because I said, I can walk into that office and I can do it from the perspective of, I want to make a difference. I want to help these guys. I mean, I was an offensive lineman. My career's over. I'm not seeking fame. I'm not seeking influence. I'm comfortable in my life and career to know that I could have walked into that place and done it from the perspective of wanting to make a difference and wanting to help those guys. But the more and more I looked at it, the more and more I realized that it was really based on politics, which almost everything is nowadays. But even back then, everything was really going to be more politically driven. I sadly don't think that a lot of the guys at the top of the food chain that deal closely and have heavy influence over the union are necessarily looking out for guys like me who went in the league as a free agent, maybe had a ton of potential, but ended up getting injured, or, and I think that the union really should be looking to help those players the most, always play to the worst case scenario, always play to the lowest common denominator, and then work your way up from there. Those top guys are going to be fine in most cases. They need support too, but if you can't support the base, if you can't support that, those foundational guys, then what are you really doing? And listen, I'm not going to get into the discussion, but even this whole situation with this vaccine requirement, mandate, whatever it is, somebody needs to look out for these players, and it's unfortunate that it's rarely the case. Most of them are left to fend for themselves, and most of them do not have access to the resources they need to be able to do that.
Nicely said, Noel.
Noel, I'm gonna put you on the spot here a little bit. What grade would you? We've I think DeMaurice Smith came in 2010, geared up for war on the last CBA, and I don't know if the results were what everyone expected. Now he was able to stick around for another CBA, which I think surprised a lot of people. What grade would you give DeMaurice Smith on his administration as executive director of the NFLPA?
So we're going like an A to F grading?
Yeah, or 1 through 10, whatever you're most comfortable with.
I'll give him a C+. And the reason I'll give him a C+ is because I think that he has at least won as much as he's lost. And that's, I think, being generous. But it's a really difficult situation. The players have, this is an unpopular opinion, but the players have absolutely no leverage. Whatever the owners want to do, ultimately they have the ability to do, and that's just the dynamic. That's the football business. They have a really short runway. They know they have a really short runway as it pertains to the player career, so they know they only have to deal with these guys for a short period of time. I went through the process of the MLB player rep certification, and the relationship that the players union and the players in MLB have with Major League Baseball. It's not perfect, but it's night and day. And the reason is because you have to deal with, if you're an owner of a Major League Baseball team, you have to deal with some of those guys for 15, 20 years. And it's difficult to take advantage of somebody in any capacity for that duration of time and not have them eventually get to the point where they're going to hold your feet to the fire. The guaranteed contracts help, but unlike the prevailing opinion out there, not all those contracts are guaranteed. Once you're at arbitration and beyond, same thing in the NHL, same thing in the NBA. But the visibility of those guys creates a tremendous amount of leverage. The ability to develop long-term relationships with management and ownership creates a lot of leverage, and football just doesn't have that dynamic. So he has been a part of increasing revenue, not increasing revenue, but increasing player share to a degree. There's been things that he's gotten accomplished alongside with the players. And listen, the players now more than ever, when Gene was running the union, Gene was the driving force behind everything. The players now are the driving force behind everything. And I think that that's probably a little bit of the lawyerly concept in his mind is, hey, listen, let me create some plausible deniability. I'm going to advise you, but ultimately this is up to you. And that's a comfortable space to be in, where the players are the ones that are going to sign on the dotted line, not necessarily him. And so that's why I don't really think as the current structure of the union or with the way the union operates right now, you could really do much better than a C+, because you're going to give and take a tremendous amount when dealing with the NFL in a negotiation, and ultimately you're going to get what they give you. I think from a rhetoric standpoint, a narrative standpoint, publicly, it could be a little bit more relationship driven versus always so contested. There's definitely times to handle stuff with a spoonful of sugar versus all the acid that gets spewed. But it's a tough position to be in. I do not envy him. And, I can appreciate that a lot of times when he is providing sound advice or guidance, it's falling on a lot of deaf ears. And that's a really difficult leadership position to be in.
Mm-hmm. Well, can you see a day when there's more centralized management of players and there isn't an agent community as we know it?
I definitely could. And I think that if there was a really clean, logical way to handle the lower level players, the bottom, I hate calling them bottom of roster because I think they're foundational, not bottom. Superstars are fleeting, especially in the NFL. They're one misstep on crappy turf away from being done. But I think those free agent players, those lower round draft picks, if there was a way to make sure, maybe incentivize that those guys were being taken care of, I think that what you just said, Neil, would already be done. And I don't, I've thought about it over the years. Maybe the concept is you take a pool of whoever the agents are out there. Maybe they get nominated by their clients, and maybe they have to stand up to some type of scrutiny from the players union, from the players side on a yearly basis, where they have to continue to legitimize their space, legitimize their position as one of the negotiating agents for the NFL players union. It unionizes things. It removes some of that capitalistic, motivation. But I don't know. How many agents do we have now, Neil? Like 1,000 some, and
it's down. It's about 755, give or take 10 agents. Seems like, depending on what day you look on the website.
Yeah, and so how many of those guys don't even have clients?
About 300 or 400.
Yeah. So it's a recipe where players are going to be put in position that somebody who really, really wants a client is going to try to do something or say something to them to persuade them into making a bad decision. And I think I think the competition is great. I think it drives a lot of ingenuity. I think it also drives a lot of mistakes because there's a lot of, learning when you're going through the learning process with somebody's career and maybe their financial well-being on the line. That's a tough situation. But yeah, I could see that happening for sure. It would just be a matter to me of figuring out how you're going to handle those free agent player relationships and making sure those guys are being taken care of first and foremost.
Now, Noel, do you expect the NIL and the transfer portal to sort of impact the wealth management side of the business the way it has in player representation, scouting, and other areas of the game?
Absolutely. What was the article that came out yesterday at some point, the top recruit in the country who's thinking about bypassing his senior year of high school to go enroll in Ohio State and take advantage of the NIL. Those situations, that's a LeBron James situation.
Yeah.
LeBron James was the original NIL. I'm fairly confident that he may or may not have been doing okay financially before he's left high school and signed with Nike. AAU and basketball has been doing that sort of stuff for forever. So these younger student athletes are going to be put in position where they are presented with financial opportunities. And they're going to have to make decisions on what they do with their lives and careers and, athletic careers, personal careers in those moments. Maybe they miss out on something, the FOMO generation. But again, to me, it boils down to the advice that they have access to. What resources do they have access to? I mean, there are people worth, as we found, there are people worth $500 million that don't have good advisors working for them. So if you're a kid coming out of, only because it's fresh on my mind, if you're a kid coming out of the Bayou in Louisiana and you've got an opportunity to make $10,000 as a high school senior or a college freshman who's trying to work their way into the starting lineup, who is going to help you handle that? You guys have seen over the years how many mistakes players coming out of college who go through these stringent review processes. How many times do guys hire agents and fire agents prior to or right after the draft? I mean, they go through these crazy, evaluations and they make mistakes. Pro guys who have been in the game for 5 years, 6 years make mistakes. So how are we to expect that a high school kid or a really, really young college kid isn't going to make mistakes? And then we're talking about money. So this isn't even something where you can say, hey, this contract looks good or it looks bad. Now you're talking about managing money. And again, you've got really wealthy, rich people out there who don't know how to do that properly. So simple answer is you're increasing the opportunity pool for the opportunists, and the opportunists will be out there swirling. And I think it's going to muddy the water. It's going to make it harder and harder for people to figure out who they should work with. And, again, going back to the first part of the conversation, that's one of the big reasons why I started making the transition that I did a few years ago, because that long-term advice is just something that is sorely needed. The agent advisory advice is great. The contract negotiation stuff is a lot of fun. It's getting harder and harder to screw that up, thankfully. But, this career transition in the long term, that 3-year career average in the NFL is a total misnomer. It doesn't include the guys that don't make rosters. The actual NFL career is probably 3 or 4 months at the longest, if you include all of those guys that get cut. So, you're basing your entire life and future and livelihood on maybe a 3 or 4 month window, realistically. And if I go back to my high school years, I can't even remember half the guys that were the biggest thing that we're never going to miss and never even had a college career, let alone a professional career. So yeah, it's going to hurt things before it helps them. And I really, really hope that more and more guys open up their eyes and get access to really good, sound, transparent, educationally based advice, not just on the career and representation end, but on the financial end, because it is just very, very difficult to get, regardless of who you are.
It's a great point. I think the fan and maybe even to some degree player expectation, thinking about the average NFL career is like 10 years. And then the true one that the NFLPA puts out is about 3.5. But the really true one, of everyone that actually goes to a camp but actually gets on a roster and how long their career is, you're right. It's probably more like 3 months, 4 months, maybe 6, maybe a couple games, but not even an accrued season. It's just very different.
Yep.
No, we got about a minute left, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask this last question. In your view, what's the biggest challenge facing the NFL today?
I think that the biggest challenge is reining in the lopsided power dynamic that they have, and not rubbing it in the players' face and the union's face. Developing more of a long-term perspective on what they're doing for the players. If nobody else is going to advocate for the players, they need to advocate for the players. And that's a difficult thing to do, because there's always this, collective bargaining concept where, they've got to give up something to get something, and we've got to give up something to get something. But I think if the NFL took a step back and said, okay, the long-term integrity of this game is about making sure that there still is that childhood joy that these players receive when they're out there on the field, when they're playing. And a lot of them do. I'm not saying that this is, this is an internment camp or something like that. Well, training camp is an internment camp, but, the season, it's not all about the money to all of these players. And the more of them that look at it as a really amazing opportunity to go out there, make money, but play the game that you love, the fans are going to see that. And it's going to bring the fans in, and it's going to make it more about the shield again, like it used to be, more about wanting to be a great football player again, like it used to be. The money comes along with it. But I think if more players were given that incentive because they knew they were being taken care of by the league, and unfortunately, most of the guys don't realize until they're done that the benefits that they do receive after their careers come from the league.
Mm-hmm.
So if the NFL were to develop more of a trust-based relationship with the players, I think they could improve a lot of things, but that's got to come from them, and it's not going to be easy. They've got to work through a lot of distrust. They've got to work through a lot of narrative and rhetoric coming from the other side with a group that unfortunately, in a lot of cases, just wants to justify their existence. And for the league, you've got to realize the position you're in. You've got to acknowledge how much power and leverage you own in that relationship, and you've got to be okay with backing off that a little bit. You don't always need to step on somebody's neck just because you can. That's coming from an offensive lineman. All right, you can be okay. You can brother-in-law it from time to time, and it'll go a long way in that relationship. So, I think for the league, it's everybody knows you're the big fish. Everybody knows that you can do whatever you want to do for the most part, but it doesn't mean you have to do it all the time. So, understanding how to wield that power that they have, and really using some forethought and some long-term concepts, more so than they have already, would go a long way, I think.
Noel, thanks so much for waking up with us, buddy. Awesome insights, clear insights. We probably could talk the full hour just about everything the NFL's got going, and maybe even work out some real solutions to these things talking to you. But I can't thank you enough for being on today, buddy. Thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being part of the ITL family for so long.
You bet. I really appreciate you guys having me on. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, anytime, happy to hop on. Maybe we look around 7:30ish or so next time around. But yeah,
maybe we'll start a later show just so we can have Noel on. Okay. All right.
Appreciate
thanks,
it,
buddy.
guys.
Have a great rest of the day.
That was
all right, man. Unbelievable. Yeah, it really was. It really was. Noel is far smarter than I am. So I like to have people that are smarter than I am to be on the show. We got one more really smart guy that's about to come on, Bo. Who is it?
Well, today's guest, we got a real sensational guest as our final guest on day 4 of the State of Football. You'd have to look long and hard to find someone more qualified to discuss the game and the business of football, none other than today's guest, Mike Sullivan, especially as it relates to player representation. Mike negotiated the contract for the #1 pick and the draft in back-to-back years in 2001 and 2002, then later spent almost a decade as the Broncos cap expert. For his exploits, he was honored as the winner of the 2021 Eugene Parker Award for Service to Agent Industry. Mike, welcome to the program this morning.
Good morning, guys. Nice to have you, or nice to be on. Thanks for having me.
Mike's another guy that woke up kind of early. He's not on the West Coast, but he is in the mountain time zone. So
yeah, you guys are easier on me.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit, man. Maybe we should swap those slots and give Noel the last one.
Hey, you know
Mike,
what? If you can't get up early in the morning, you're not going to get enough things done in a day.
Maybe you owe us. Maybe you should be thanking us.
Exactly.
So, Mike, when you were an agent in the 2000s, what was the toughest issue that you faced? And if you were an agent today, what would concern you the most?
Well, I think getting clients is the lifeblood of an agent. And that's true whether you're starting out or whether you've been around for 15 or 20 years. One of the things that surprised me was in my early years with Lee Steinberg, we had tremendous success early. And I just thought, oh, well, we're never going to have to worry about getting clients. Look how good we are. And I learned that every client is a new experience, and trying to figure out how each player is going to handle the process and who matters are things that are really hard to discover. I've had stories where we spent a whole season talking to one parent of a divorced couple, the parents of a player, and they said they were cooperating and that we only needed to talk to one parent. And so we got to the end of the season, and we had our big meeting, we thought, with the player's family. And we get there, and the player ends up not showing up, and the mom says, well, the coach called a night practice, and but it won't change the issue. And so we went ahead and gave our presentation, and my colleague Doug and I went back to our hotel room, and we go, wow, that's kind of a waste of time. You're never going to get a player when he's not there. And then we get a phone call from the mother, who we'd been talking with the dad. And she says, I'm so sorry. This was a fake meeting. We were just placating the dad. The real meetings were all last week.
Wow.
And we realize now that we screwed up, and that things that we believed that other agents told us were total BS, and you should have been in the process. And unfortunately for us, the mom was not comfortable going back to the player and saying, you know what, we kind of didn't do our research properly, and there's another guy we'd like you to meet, but he'd already made his decision and he was happy with it. So we spent a whole year basically wasting our time because we'd been told how to handle it, and it turned out to be completely false. There were a lot of times where, and I don't know if it's as true now, because it's been, as you said, it's been about 10 years since I've been in the game. I'm not sure, but when I was, in sort of the heyday of the 90s and 2000s, we were very frequently starting with the parents. And there were a lot of times where the parents said, we're going to be very much involved. Our son has never made a decision without our approval. And we came to learn that choosing an agent was often the first decision that a player wanted to make on his own. He wanted to show, I'm grown up, I can make my own decision. And so having access to the player, trying to get access to the player is clearly the most difficult thing. And as part of that, it's knowing, was there a girlfriend involved? Is there a best friend involved? Is there a teammate that's in the NFL who might have a lot of impact? So that was the thing that was a continual, I don't want to say problem because it's part of the business, but it was probably the biggest thing that it was what we spent the most time on before you got into the actual process of recruiting the player. And I would say today, doing your research, really trying to find out who is in the player's life is probably the best thing. But you really, really need to get access to the player. And with the new NIL rules, it's gonna be a little bit weird, I think, because now agents are going to be contacting freshmen, sophomores, and it's going to be totally legal, which wasn't legal before. It's going to be interesting to see how the college coaches react to this, because again, in the years that I was full-time in the agent business, trying to deal with the college coaches was a huge problem. They just felt like there's no benefit to the college to have the agents talking to the players until their eligibility has expired. So that was another factor that you had to work, or you had to recognize as you're trying to get access to the players.
Those are incredible stories. Now, this next question, you talked about, making that travel and then the mom calling you guys. So I don't know if that led to what might your answer be to this next question, Mike, but if you could relive that part of your career, would you be in the time spent as a contractor advisor, or would you like to go back to helping the Broncos win another Super Bowl?
Well, let me make clear that I really loved the time that I was an agent and that I worked for players. I worked for some amazing guys, but to go back to the early days, I was fortunate enough to play football in high school and college. I made some good friends who went on to the NFL. And as I became a lawyer and then a CPA and then had a little bit of financial consulting experience, my friends were advising me. They're saying, look, you should be an agent. You're the perfect person to be an agent with your sports background, your tax background, and all these things. But I really initially felt like I'd played team sports my whole life. And I thought, I think I'd rather try the team side first if I can. So I sent a letter to the commissioner of baseball, and he forwarded the letter to the owner of the San Francisco Giants, who happened to work in my building. I was living in San Francisco at the time. And he called me in for an interview, and we had a wonderful talk for at least about 2.5 hours. At the end of it, he said, "This is Bob Lurie, who was the owner of the Giants at the time." He said, "Mike, this is a fantastic interview. I'd like to offer you the ticket manager job for $25,000 a year." And I said, "Bob, I'm already making $50,000 in my current job." And he said, "Mike, the first thing you need to learn is that in baseball, all the money goes to the people on the field." That's what sent me to the other side of the table. And that's how I became an agent. I was hoping as an agent that I could build the camaraderie that comes with being part of a team. I got a partner in 1994, Jeff Spurbeck, who was phenomenal. And we rarely disagreed on anything. Our philosophies were perfect together. But the agent business is an I business as opposed to a we business. And it was hard to get that sense of even when we had the first pick in the draft, the deal that I did for Michael Vick, I found out he'd been traded, which was the key to getting that deal while I was in the air. And I'm getting texts in a cab going to the hotel in New York. There's nobody there for me to high five with or be excited with, So the working for a unified goal like a Super Bowl was my preference. And if I could do it again, I would like to have I would have put 20 years in. My goals as an agent were to represent the first pick in the draft and to represent a Super Bowl winning starting quarterback. And both those things happened in 2001. And so probably those last few years, especially as the business was changing, and I think for the worse in the early 2000s, that would have been a time for me. If I had the opportunity to, I think I would have liked to have moved on to the team side a little earlier.
Okay, yeah. I can't imagine there's any higher high than actually winning a Super Bowl and being part of that in a fundamental way and in an integral way, the way you were, Mike. That'd be fun.
There's no question about that. Certainly the highlight of my career was, you're down on the field. Your team is one. The streamers and the confetti's coming down, and it's for your team. It was just really, and I had the good fortune of my kids lived in the Bay Area, so we won our Super Bowl in the 49ers stadium. So my kids got to be there with me too, which was great. Yeah,
didn't realize that. That's amazing. That's
yeah.
All right, so Mike, a lot of the people that are watching today are aspiring agents. They may be taking the exam in a week, or maybe they're just thinking about doing it someday. But you don't go from passing the exam to being a super agent overnight. How long did it take you to really establish key relationships with administrators, with scouts, with fellow agents, with people in the recruiting space? I mean, how long did it take you when you felt like I've got a network where I can really do some work in this game now?
Well, I had my first 3.5 years were with Lee Steinberg, and he was the one out doing all the recruiting. I was kind of the inside guy doing the contracts. Once I got out on my own, although I had some clients, I realized that whether it was local beat reporters, team reps, other agents, it really has to be one at a time, and it's based upon the client. Once you have a client, that gives you the status to, at a pro day, to introduce yourself to a scout. Because I hate to say it this way, but as an agent, you're a nobody without a client. Mm-hmm. And the ability to call a team and say, I represent so-and-so, is there anything you're willing to tell me about my player if you're talking about the draft? And same thing when you have a player in the league and you call up, the personnel director, how's my guy doing? All these things are based upon having a client that's the linchpin of doing it. But once you have the client, then the way that you interact with those people is critical. I heard the last part of Neil's comments, and I totally agree with him that there's an arrogance about some people that some people in the NFL carry, and they don't need to. There's whichever side has the leverage, there's no reason not to be nice. You can say difficult words in a nice manner. Nobody wants to hear no, or nobody wants to hear that we can't get the deal done at this point. But there is the ability to say, you know what, let me figure this out. Let me talk. Even if you're not going to get to a deal, if you're a club, for example, maintain the relationship by being a reasonably nice guy. And that goes when it comes to the media. I think truth is key. The reporters want to be accurate. And as long as they know they're getting accurate information from you, and sometimes teams don't put out accurate information, then they'll come to rely on you. And that's how the relationship builds. And I had literally dozens of relationships. I was fortunate to represent players pretty much on every team. So I got to know reporters in every city, and many of them became lifelong friends because I loved the job that they did, and I respected that they wanted to get things right. So bottom line is that these relationships are a function of having a client, and then once you have the client, making the contacts with the people with that connection, and then being nice to them, not being haughty or acting like you're a big man on campus.
Mm-hmm. Great points.
Yeah, excellent view. Now, in your terms, Mike, what team does the best job of managing the cap today? And then in general, amongst all the other 31 teams, I would say, what would you grade, the overall cap management by the National Football League?
Well, this is one of my favorite questions that I've had over the years. The reality is that for many years now, most teams, virtually every team, works on a cash basis. They have a cash a budget that's set by the owner, and for the most part, teams are basically say, the players are getting enough money, make it work with the amount of dollars in the cap. But the reality is that any owner is free to spend more than the cap. Adjusting your cap is easy. That's what most people don't want to accept. The problem is you have to pick the right players. If you pick players that play out their contracts, you never have a cap issue. It's when you make mistakes with players, especially if they have big contracts, that you have dead money. But it's not because of the cap. It's because the player didn't pan out. And so ultimately, I think that there are a couple of teams who I think, in addition to having a little bit more flexibility, have had cap guys that I think are super knowledgeable. And I would put at the top Parag Marate of the 49ers. I've known Parag ever since the late 90s when he went to the 49ers, and I think he's always been brilliant, but at the same time, very nice in the way that he communicates. And they've been able as a club to do certain things that are significant in terms of their ability to make personnel decisions. The biggest one being that they use April 1st as a lot of their key dates, as opposed to the 1st, 3rd, 5th day of the league year, which gives them a little bit more time to make those personnel decisions and gives them time to make sure that they're the right decisions. But ultimately, the majority of decisions relating to the cap are a function of, well, we missed on these players and now we need to get new players. But the owner can always do that. In fact, when I got to the Broncos the first year, we already had our budget set before Peyton Manning became available. But when it became clear that we had a shot at him, our owner trustee immediately approved whatever it was going to take financially to get Peyton. And so my point is that it really comes down to the owner's willingness to spend. And I'm not saying they should spend above the cap, but I'm saying that dealing with the cap is easy because the issue is really who's going to take care of the cash.
Okay. All right, so Mike, what's the one piece of advice as we wrap up the show? We're 7 days away from the NFL agent exam. What's one piece of advice you'd give a young agent today? Just kind of, I don't know. What would it relate to? Would it be with recruiting? Would it be with how they negotiate? What would be your thoughts there?
Again, I go back to that you need clients, and the ability to get clients is the most important thing. I still recommend that a player, for me, going to law school was a huge help because it gave me a marketable skill that I always knew I could fall back on, and it gave me the confidence to go out and pursue aggressively the agent business. And at the same time, I think that as much as every agent feels like he's going to be successful, it's an extremely difficult business to break into in a way that you can provide for your family, which I think is the goal. And so having law school gave me the ability to communicate, the ability to persuade, which is kind of a lost art in football. But bottom line is that I felt like I had developed skills, which then I could build upon as I try to attract clients. Because when you don't have clients, having clients and a client list is how you get new clients. And when you don't have clients, you have to have something to take to the player. And the ability to show that you have some marketable skills and if you can effectively talk, then you have a chance to persuade him to take a chance on you. There's no question, breaking into the business is the toughest part of being an agent.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Mike, thanks again, man, for the great insights. What a contributor to the game you've been. What a career, and a legacy that you lead, which is one reason why you were given the Eugene Parker Award this year. Thanks for being a class act and for getting up with us and so many other things, buddy.
Well, thanks for the kind words. I appreciate it anytime, guys, and look forward to talking to you again.
All right. Thanks again, Mike.
Take care.
All right, man. Hey, we're at the end of show 4. We got one more to go. So far, so good, right? Bo, can you hear me? Sam, I think Bo's mic's off.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, and I can.
Uh-oh.
One question I wish we could have got in after he compared the cap into signing the right players. I immediately thought of the scouting departments, and if you have a good scouting department, you have good players. Does that kind of transition or mirror if you have a better cap? I don't know, but definitely a question to ask Mike in the days to come.
It's all a big chain. Everything's linked together, and everything's got to kind of work in conjunction with you. It is a team. It's more than one person for sure. And that's a great point, man. All right, guests for tomorrow, Bo. Run them down for us.
Our final day of Neil and Bo on the State of Football Friday. We're going to start the show off with Aston Wilson of Agency One Sports Group. Then we're going to have Matt Lindsay, GM of Ole Miss. And then our final guest tomorrow is Neil McCready of the RebelGrove.com. So a little SEC Mississippi football down there. So like I said, it should be another fun day.
Yeah, if you're an Ole Miss guy, man, tomorrow's must-see TV. You got to be here. We got to have some really awesome stuff. Neil shoots from the hip. He's got all kind of good stuff. Matt is one of the most talented people in the football space. He's got an NFL background as well as a college background. He's one of the first college GMs out there, so he's going to have a lot to add too. And of course, Aston has been a guest on so many different platforms and so many different spaces for me, and has been part of the ITL family for a long time. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be our last day. I can't believe it. Don't forget, season 2 with Rick starts on Monday, August 2nd. It's coming. It's here. It's just around the corner. He'll be done with us, and Rick will be back. Some sense of normalcy again. Thanks for joining us, and we got one more day. Hope to see you tomorrow.